Yeah. Let's move Rafe to another Sunday. So, let the Christ and I be the same. Yeah? What a great last line to that song. Lazarus, the story of Lazarus. There are a lot of old stories in our traditions, aren't there? There are a lot of stories. There's certainly a lot of stories about what Jesus did and all the healings that he did, all the miracles that happened. I used to talk about, in my early years as a minister, I used to talk about how Jesus walked on the water, and I would say, perhaps it was low tide and the apostles were drunk. And they woke up and they went, whoa, look at Jesus. They still thought they were at sea. I don't say that anymore, except I just did. But I don't talk about that anymore because I have a better understanding and a better respect for those stories. Because there's an understanding to those stories that goes beyond the comprehension of it, that goes beyond the logic of it. And today's talk title, and when I gave this talk title, Kevin called me after he got this talk title and he went, "What is that talk title? It sounds so serious." And I said, well, it kind of is. The talk title today is An Understanding Beyond Comprehension. Because for me, Easter is kind of one of those things beyond comprehension. The idea of Jesus rising from the dead, the idea of the entire Catholic idea of Christianity, of Jesus and what he taught in the crucifixion, all of that was beyond my idea of logic for a very, very long time. And I just want you to know I have certainly transcended that to Easter not being something beyond my comprehension. So this week, as I was preparing for the talk, I thought, okay, the 10th Easter talk, I've talked about, the bunny rabbit, and I've talked about a lot of fun things, and I've made a lot of cute and clever, I thought, jokes about Easter and how to tell the story. And I just want you to know you're not going to get that person today. What I did this week was on Friday night, when it was Good Friday, I decided to watch The Passion of Christ. And I'd never seen it, the Mel Gibson version. In my household, we're not allowed to watch Mel Gibson movies. But since Kevin's out of town, I rented The Passion of Christ. And I know you're watching and you're going to kill me for sharing that. But, oh well. So I rented The Passion of Christ, and I was just all by myself, sitting in my house. It was kind of dark, and, it was just nighttime. And I started watching this, and I will tell you I had to fast forward through most of the brutal stuff. I just could not watch it. And I was literally, my heart was just broken in two watching what this man went through. And I say man, because that's what Jesus was, a man. He was human, but he was divine at the same time. So as I'm watching this story, the parts that really got me were the parts where they kept flashing back to what he did, to what he said, to what he taught. And I found myself in tears much of the movie in the flashbacks, not so much in the brutal part. And I noticed in the movie that Mary, the mother of Jesus, throughout the movie was not crying necessarily as she watched what her son was going through, but she had a look on her of understanding, and they seemed to have an understanding. And I got an understanding that was beyond what was comprehensible. And that's what I'm really here to talk about today, because I believe that what Jesus and what the story of Jesus and what Easter teaches us, and certainly the Passion of Christ, is the indestructibility of the human spirit. And that's what's so important to get from this story. The indestructible nature of the human that we are, the divine human that we are. Jesus came to teach only one thing. Jesus came to teach love. That was it. That was it. He came to teach love. In fact, he called it the new commandment. In John chapter 13, verse 33 to 35, he said, This is my commandment. Love one another, even as I have loved you. That was it. All that has been done in Jesus' name, and yet the man came to teach one thing. We must learn to love. First and foremost, and only love. That's it. In the Garden of Gethsemane, when Peter struck down the guard and chopped off his ear, I was captured by the actor, by that point I was watching Jesus. When he said, Peter, put down your sword. Peter, put down your sword. As everything was coming at him, and the one person who was there to protect him, he looks at him and says, Peter, put down your sword. He had to say it 3 times. If I had been there, he would have had to say it 1,000 times. Put down your sword. Because what he was really saying was, put down your anger. Put down your hatred. Put down your judgment. Put down your fear and love. Only love. So, this movie really touched me. But not really the movie. The story, once again. I mean, I was raised Catholic, as Ellen said. I was one of those families. I mean, we were 3 boys. 3 boys. The 4th one came much later. That were dressed up every Easter, identical. We all had the same little suit on with the same little straw hats. My mother had the most incredible dress. She was an incredibly beautiful woman. So was my father, an incredibly beautiful woman. And my father was a very handsome man. And we were like the picture-perfect family at the Easter parade. And we were dressed up for that Easter parade. And we were perfect. But we were Catholic. And we understood what we were there to do, which was to represent Jesus and represent our teaching. So I grew up with all this teaching, but I am suddenly, just for the first time, feeling like I'm getting it, where I'm actually getting a relationship with Jesus that transcends Catholicism, that transcends New Thought even. It just transcends because it is an understanding beyond comprehension. It's a feeling, it's a knowing, it's an emotion, it's just a thing inside. So I had to ask myself this question watching that movie. What if, you're looking at this beautiful man, Jesus. I mean, most of the pictures of him, he was just this beautiful man. And I thought to myself, I think that's the first man I ever fell in love with when I was a little boy, Jesus. And you look at him and he's saying, just love, only love. The new commandment, love one another even as I have loved you. Only love. And I had to ask myself this very important question. What would my life be like if I only loved? That's it. Only loved. In the face of everything, I only loved. I didn't have judgment. I wasn't sarcastic. I mean, I'd use it a little bit for humor. But I wasn't really sarcastic. I didn't really find people offensive. I wasn't really offended by people. I loved them. I understood them. What if I went through my life and I really, truly only loved? What would happen? Well, I had this understanding that all of the crap would just fall away. It would have to. There would be no place for it to land. There'd be no way it could possibly stay in my life if I only loved. 3 years ago, I stood right on this stage, and I had to come out here and give a talk and tell you that I had stage 4 cancer. And somehow teach a lesson in that was not scary, even though I was very scared. And I gave a talk called Rise Above It. And the idea of the talk was rising above conditions. At the time, the condition was cancer. And you know what? That was the easy part. Cancer is the easy part. All of these things that we think are monumentally important and devastatingly awesome in our lives, they're the easy things to overcome. That's easy to rise above. The question is, or the truth is that we're being called to rise above anything that isn't love. And I will ask you to look at your life and take a look at how much non-love there is in your life. How much of your time does your mental, conscious thought focus on something that is not loving? I think a lot of the time we get caught up in that. Every time we have a negative thought about another person or ourselves, we are not loving. We're doing something else. And yet Jesus came to say, only love. So, is it possible for us to rise above anything in our lives that isn't love? I don't think that's an impossible task. I think it can be viewed as a very difficult task because I view it as a very difficult task. I've looked at my own life. In one day, yesterday, I went through my day and I thought, every time I thought something that wasn't love, I had to be conscious of it because I made myself be conscious of it. And I'm here to own up to it. Oh my God. How often a thought of mine went to something that was judgmental or annoyed or angry and to a non-loving place. And I thought to myself, we have a lot of work to do. And when I say we, I mean you have a lot of work to do. I mean me. And that's why I said, I feel very different today, giving this talk. You know, this class that I'm teaching, the Essential Ernest Holmes, I knew when I decided to teach that class that it was going to change something in me. And I knew it was going to change the trajectory of this church. And I knew it was going to crack us open, and those that needed to be here would be here, and those that didn't wouldn't. I knew that. I knew I was taking a risk, teaching something that was going to almost reestablish what we believe here at this center. And I believe that that's what this class is doing for me, and for many of you that are in the class, and for all of us, because I get to get up here on a Sunday and grow from it. Well, this week in class, Ernest Holmes, there was a quote, this sneaky little quote in this chapter. Out of nowhere, one sentence. He writes this one sentence, and you're like, what? You wrote the science of my textbook of 7,000 pages? And then you say this that almost obliterates a lot of that. I loved it. I just love when things happen like that. And this was it. He said, we should awaken not to our divinity, but to our humanity. And my mind was like, I could have had a V8. We spend so much time trying to be God and dissing this thing called our human self, our human emotions, our human feelings. Oh, I made that mistake. Oh, I acted like that. Oh, my God, who am I? And yet what he's saying to us is, Ernest Holmes is saying, we should awaken to our divine humanity. Jesus Christ was saying, I give you a new commandment, to love even as I have loved you. To understand that everything you are is love, and that you are a divine human. Jesus did not disassociate from the human when he spoke of the divine. In fact, when he said, the Father and I are one, he actually meant it. He actually meant for us to get, the Father and I are one. Now, here's the thing. It may seem incomprehensible for you to love at all times. What if somebody does something against you? Are you supposed to just let them do that and love them? No and yes. No, you are not supposed to just let them do that, and yes, you are supposed to love them. There's the challenge, isn't it? Someone does something against you. Has anyone here had anyone ever do anything against them? Has anyone here had anybody say anything bad about you? Me either. But there are people where that happens. So what are you supposed to do? Speak your truth and then love them. I think we forget the second part, and I know I do at times. So I have to ask myself, what would it look like to love at all times? It would be the quintessential rising above it, wouldn't it? That would be to rise above it, to love at all times. Could you do it? Could I do it? That's really the question. Every word spoken, love. Every communication you have, love. Every reaction, love. Every consideration comes from love. When I'm angry, love. When I'm scared, love. When I'm confused and frustrated, love. When I'm ridiculed and judged harshly, love. When they take me, beat me, crucify me, and hang me on a cross, love. Because that's what he did. He didn't start yelling at them. He didn't condemn them. In fact, he asked for forgiveness for them. wow, I have fallen so short of what Jesus came to ask us to do. So, you got to ask yourself what it would look like to feel only love at all times, no matter what was happening in your life. I got an email from someone who took the last CPR, and CPR begins tomorrow, and I am so thankful that it begins tomorrow. Because that means I get to spend hours a day reading blogs from people that are dealing with certain things, and I get every morning to speak at least 15 minutes of truth and be with everybody on that journey, and it's hundreds of people, and I cannot wait for it to start. But I got an email from someone who took one of the last CPRs, and it was from a Catholic, and he wrote me and said, I'm a Roman Catholic, and I took your last CPR, and he was very, 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 very complimentary and very respectful and beautiful. And he said, I'd like to give you an article to read, and it was from the Catholic, from some Catholic newspaper. And it was this thing about if you were to say you were God, then you are separate from God. He said, so here's my challenge. I'm being taught that when I say I'm God, I'm actually creating something separate from God. And I totally got it. And because this article also said that our separation from God is the only cause of all of our discord. But the Catholic Church, for the most part, still teaches that God is an entity outside of oneself, even though the Baltimore Catechism teaches us that God is everywhere, which must mean God is within me. So I wrote this man back and I said, I agree with everything that's said in this article. The only thing I question that I'm not on the side of, which is that God is out there. God is who and what I am. And as that, every time I step away from love, I feel separate from God, and the discord happens. So in one sense, this entire Catholic article was exactly what we teach. We just have taken it a step, I believe, further. And you know what? I don't. I think we've taken it a step back to what Jesus was actually saying. I and the Father are one. He's not the exception. I am not the exception. You are not the exception. I and the Father are one is what we live by, the oneness. That's who and what we are. The new commandment. This new commandment, an understanding beyond comprehension. But just because it's beyond comprehension doesn't mean that we don't understand it. Doesn't mean that we don't understand. There are other ways to understand other than through the intellect. We are such an intellectual teaching, aren't we? We sometimes get so intellectual. We are too intellectual for our own good. We are so cerebral, we forget to feel. It's like, I forgot to breathe. I forgot to feel. Because there is understanding in feeling that's beyond comprehension. And just because I can't explain it with my words doesn't mean it's not real. Yes? Just because I can't give you a lecture on something doesn't mean it doesn't exist inside of me. That is understanding beyond comprehension. And it's in the feelings. It's in the emotions. Are we willing to honor our feelings and our emotions as well as all the intelligence that we find? You know, do you ever hear yourself just saying, this just feels right? You know, everything out here is telling me to the contrary. Don't go there. When we bought this building, it felt right. Everything on paper told us no. And all of my board members who are mostly here today were all like, no, this is not the right place for us. But something in me had a feeling. And I honored that. Well, I actually honored them. We went and got another place. And that fell out. And we had to come here. But that's still spirit doing what it needs to do, yes? We all know that. So I want to talk for 1 second about spiritual logic. You know, today we no longer believe what we can't understand, do we? We just don't believe. It's hard for us to believe what we don't understand. And yet, we know it is done unto us as we believe. Okay? So, what needs attention is our ability to believe the truth in things that maybe don't seem logical, but that feel correct, because I'm in touch with some ancient wisdom that actually knows, and knows that it knows. I mean, this isn't our parents' religion, is it? This isn't the religion I grew up in. This is not our parents' teaching, necessarily. We don't say yes when we aren't sure what it means. We don't easily say yes when we don't understand it. I was listening to Dr. Walker's CDs this week, and he told a story about this little girl. And she went to her mother and she said, Mommy, where did I come from? And the mother said, well, God sent you. She went, oh. She said, well, where did you come from? And mother smiled and she said, well, God sent me. And Daddy? She said, well, God sent Daddy too. And she just thought for a minute. She was like, where did your mom and dad come from? She says to her mother, and she goes, well, Grammy and Grandpa came from God too. God sent them. Well, what about their parents? And she said, God sent them too. Very patient mother. Can you tell that? God sent them too. And the little girl thought for a minute. She was like, do you mean no one in our family has had sex in over 200 years? No wonder they're so grumpy. That was a Dr. Walker story. And the reason why I tell it is for this. Yes, kids, you can laugh. The reason I tell it is this. We don't buy that stuff anymore. We don't buy that God sent me. We don't buy a lot of the traditions. We don't buy a lot of the things that are said to us from an old tradition. So the question is, how do we expand our understanding of what is logical? You know, for the Jews, raising Lazarus from the dead was logical. For the Jews, Jesus walking on water was logical to them. They expected miracles. The resurrection of Jesus was logical. The rolling away of the stone and finding it empty was logical. The physical appearance of Jesus in front of them 3 days later was logical. For me, the most logical thing in all of this is this new commandment. Love. That's the most logical part of this entire story of Easter. Easter used to celebrates the resurrection. I don't think that's the real message. I think it's what Ernest Holmes said, awaken to our humanity. Jesus showed us that he was not afraid of the human condition. He showed us that the human condition is the divine condition, and it cannot be destroyed just because you destroy the body. That's what he was showing us. Do whatever you want. I will still love you. You cannot kill, crush, destroy, or eliminate love. And if the story of Jesus shows us anything, it shows us that he proved that. Because his last words were forgiveness, which thank you, Jill Johnson, for starting us on that. So to be human is not just the idea of the body. That's what Jesus came here to teach. To be human is to be divine, because nothing can destroy love. So today, we celebrate this new commandment. But I have to tell you this, because this I speak to myself. It starts with loving yourself. Don't think you can go out there and love the world and withhold from yourself, because you can't. Everything starts and begins at home, in your own consciousness. You have to love yourself. When I woke up this morning, I usually sleep with a mask on because I have a glass bedroom. And I didn't last night because I thought, I'm going to get up early. But I didn't. And the lights woke me up, and I opened my eyes, and the light was so pervasive. And I heard this voice saying, don't forget this moment. Don't forget that there are moments when you are enlightened. And even in my head it said, get out of bed and go type that so you don't forget it, because you're about to go back to sleep. Because I was reaching for my mask, thinking, I'll just cover my eyes for a few minutes. And I heard, get out of bed and write that down, because you're not going to remember it. And I did. So I remembered it. I remembered to come here and tell you, don't forget to notice when you get it. Don't forget to notice when the light goes on and you are illuminated. Don't forget to notice when you feel what it means to love. Don't forget to notice. Be aware when it happens. I want to invite Namaste and Doug back. I didn't know how I wanted to end my talk this morning, and then I did. So I'm going to invite you, just everyone take a deep breath. And Doug LeBeau, Reverend Doug LeBeau, and I, who really are the two people who began this church. There are many that joined us, but this was the duo that said, we can do this. So I think it's appropriate that we get to do this, just you and I, and all of you. And all of you. So I invite you to just close your eyes and just listen. In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and I see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets you free. There is only love. When I lose myself, when it seems I may have lost my way, when I go inside and quiet my mind, I can hear Spirit gently say, there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets you free. There is only love. If you want to join me, join me. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets you free. There is only love. And so the new commandment, to love one another, even as I have loved you, is really the bedrock of where I see this center moving forward. And I commit myself to loving all of you, even as I have loved myself, and as I have come to understand that God is the truth and center and beingness of what I am. And that means love. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you.